All right, so hey everybody, it's Stace here, and I wanted to do a little chat with Leslie O'Leary, who is here with me, and she is, I don't know if you call yourself a doll maker, is that how you kind of, or
Yeah,
textile
there's
artist, or
really not a better word for it,
yeah.
so that's what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so she's a doll maker amongst many other things. Um, And I'll just sort of give you a little spiel about her. And I'm going to put some links below all of this too. And I definitely would recommend that you go check out like all the different places, but her blog, I think too, where she kind of talks about her process and you can see some of her pictures of things that she's created. But she is a full-time textile artist. She's a master at her craft. And when you see some of her images, you will see what I mean. And she's just been dedicated to a real unwavering, just presence, I guess I would say, like, with her craft. And it looks like she's been doing like two different things, like in terms of this. So she's got some work that she does with collectors in creating these very intricate little human forms and animal forms and things like that she sells to her collectors, but she also teaches, and she's been teaching for 35 years. Is that right?
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
long time. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So, right, there's a lot of rich history there. And there's a lot of like symbolism that we'll talk about a little bit, but a lot of that it looks like it's coming from Asian cultures, Chinese and Japanese, different sort of symbols and cultural ideas that feel like they're really important. And that makes it really a unique thing with what you're doing. And I wanted to connect with you, as a doll maker myself, but also because my doll making is like probably on the way other end of the spectrum, I think, probably from you. I would say definitely in terms of sort of like the intricate like stuff and maybe even the approach and definitely what they look like. And so I always am just fascinated by sort of the idea of doll making. One, just as a thing that we do, but like the approach and sort of the what comes out of us, as makers. So I'm very excited to see like where we go with all of this. So anyway, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm so
Yeah.
excited to be here and to share this time with you and like to see where it's going to take us. That will be what is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, because I'll say this, and I don't know what your experience is with this, but when I sort of talk about doll making in my languaging, it's always like spirit dolls because I have sort of this whole philosophy. So that's kind of my approach, and I come from energy work and like coaching and personal growth and a background in counseling, all that. Um, but when I talk about it, sometimes the look on people's face is sort of like, ooh, scary. The scary dolls, like doll making is sort of this scary, weird thing. Or they just don't really understand what it means. Like, why are people playing with dolls? Why are women like making and playing with dolls? And I'm like, no, there's something else that's happening. So let's start there. Like, what's your kind of take on doll making? How did you get into it? Like, what was that impulse, I guess, for you?
Well, I'm one of those beings that came to this earth that kind of already knew what she was meant to do. And I'll make this very short. When I was, I think like 3 or 4 years old, when I could at least verbalize, I asked my mom about a dress and the fabric and the buttons on it specifically, and I described it to a T. And she said, Leslie, you were 1 year old when I made
Wow.
that
Okay.
dress for you. So And then kind of fast forward to when I was four-ish or so, I wanted a mannequin for Christmas because I wanted to design clothing for it, but I didn't even know how to sew. So it's just something that's always been in me and always with me. And I really believe that's why I was brought to this earth is to do this. And so of course I had to go out there and make a living. So I was in the dental field for 14 years, and then it was time to get out of it. There was some issues that were going on with the dentist I was working for. So got out of it, and I knew that I wanted to do something with fabric. I knew that's what it was. And um, doll making just came to me. And so I decided to, and I had grown up sewing. So I already had that sewing concept behind me. And I was taking a sleeve from this pattern and a bodice from this and putting it together. And so all of that was already there in me. And so I just started making dolls, and I went to our local fiber shop and I said, would you like for, I took my little basket of wool dolls in and I said, would you like me to teach? And they said, yes. And I said, fantastic. And they said, do you have a pattern? And I said, yes, I have a pattern. You know how that goes. And
I do
so,
now.
yeah, yes. And I'm going to go home and make one right now. And so that was 35 years ago. And that's how I started. And believe it or not, my first doll's name was A Doll with a Colorful Soul
Mm,
because I wanted people. I feel like there's two parts to, especially for me for teaching. There is the soul essence of dolls, like why are we making them? Why are we here? But then there's also that technique part. So it's kind of right brain, left brain, all brought together. And it's so I really look at both of those aspects when I'm teaching anything. So
yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I love that because I am not a sewer. I to this day, like I cannot, like it's just like, ugh, like,
Yeah.
ugh. And I think that the thing that I was drawn to your dolls, because I started following you on Instagram long before saw the interview on Substack, and I'll post that too. A woman named Pam Bale had interviewed both of us and on her podcast, and that's kind of where I was like, hey, you guys know each other? Maybe I could connect with you.
Cool thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of intricate bit to me is just sort of not the way I make. It's sort of not the way that I do anything,
Mhm.
right? And I kind of got into needle felting, with my dolls
Mhm.
because it just felt like I had more freedom to sort of mush things together and not have to be really precise. And I find like even now when I'm making dolls and I'm trying to make clothes, I'll still go to like even wet felting because I just feel like I have like nothing really has to be straight and like
Right.
that is my whole world. And so I
Right.
get really fascinated like with your dolls and like the detail and just the ability to like make clothes. Like that to me is just so beyond what my brain can kind of do. So it's just fascinating, that.
Well, and I feel like there's such a balance in life. There's people like me who are like, I'm going to say neurotically detailed, and that's pretty much what I am, but I just love that. And I personally admire the heck out of people that can like wing it and just like roll it and glue it and put it together and create these fabulous things. And I think that that is such a gift also because I do not have that gift of being able to loosen up
Mhm.
and let it be. So, yeah, I love that.
So that kind of brings me to this idea because looking on your blog, there was one of the things that I saw where you were like, I kind of start with this image, like you sort of even just jotted down almost like a picture. So is that like normal for you to like have an idea of where you're going before you begin?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think because I'm so detailed, um, I this is my take on how my art comes to me. I believe that everything comes from the divine, and
Mhm.
so I believe that I just am able to reach up there into the ether and bring it into my consciousness because I really feel like I'm really channeling this work. I
Mhm.
truly believe that and have always believed that. And so this idea comes to me, and when it comes to me, it's like an inkling, it's like a could be. So I rapidly sketch it down, like just like sketch it down so fast so that it's like a stick figure with like a bunch of stuff on it, and then a couple words of where what I want it to be because I want to capture it. I want it to be me who gets to do it.
Mhm.
And so it's just my take on, because I believe that you and I both could reach up to the ether and both come with this beautiful idea. And it's whatever our being is able and capable of doing.
Mhm.
And that's how it comes out.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It feels like that for me too. I mean, I definitely feel like I'm having a conversation with something, but for me, I start it from like a really different place. I'm always just like, I just feel drawn to make something, and it's usually when that happens, there's something that I'm mulling over. For me, I think a lot of my dolls just are about process, right?
Mhm.
And so, but I just get started. Like I never know what I'm gonna do. I'm like, hey, I'll start with some wire, or maybe I'll start with this, and maybe it'll be needle felt, or maybe it'll be clay, and I just kind of let that conversation keep happening. And I feel like I'm having an actual conversation with something that is holding these ideas that I'm kind of working through. And it was sort of like that even when I was making things for other people. I would talk to them a little bit about what they wanted, and then I would create this thing and I would write this whole story about like this is what the doll was telling me about you, and maybe this will help. And I do feel like there's something that kind of comes through that we get to translate. you know
Yes.
yeah.
I am so with you on that. I would say for me, it's a completed project, and I'm guided through it.
Okay, yeah.
So so that's why I sketch it down so I know where I'm going with it. Um, and I just like I'll be finishing up one step and the next step is already there. So I'm
Mhm,
just
mhm,
following. And I think that's the big thing is for artists to know that if you can let it guide you instead of trying to control it, once you control it, you're on a different path,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know, you just make it so much harder on yourself. So,
Mhm,
um, and I think the most miraculous thing about it is as I'm doing it, I'm following all these steps, and the last piece I created had I almost thought it was too much. It's actually called The Healer. There was so many parts and pieces to it that I thought, is it going to be like overloaded with information and too much? But that's what it needed to be. And so
mhm.
that's what it was. And it is, I guess for me, it's through the technique that I can create the voice of what is guiding me.
Mhm.
So, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, so there's lots of little details, and there's on your website you have pictures of the healer doll, which is up
Yeah.
there just recently, I think.
Yeah.
But it's like there's lots of little detail, lots of little symbolism, right down to like this is the red string, and so you have some ways of actually saying this is what this means, like kind of explaining the symbolism. So how does that work for you? Do you kind of know it beforehand? Or while you're doing it, are you getting like downloaded bits of information about this is what this means? Like, how does that
Yeah,
work?
that's a great question. And I'm going to back it up a little bit. So, I wanted to, well, first off, let me say this. Above, this is my desktop right here. And so this is my desk where I'm sitting. And above here, I have two giant whiteboards. And on the giant whiteboards, I have categories of stuff that I want to do. And so it's broken into like workshops and then, social media. We all have to do that. And then creatures of the divine and the weavers. And so within each, let's just go over to Creatures of the Divine and the Weavers. So that's my collector series. And in the Weavers series, I knew, and the Weavers came to me, I'm going to say 3 years ago, just the name. And so sometimes I need to sit on things and let them come to me in bits and pieces. And then once I knew I wanted to do the healer, then the full download comes. And I did need to tweak it a little bit because it was so overloaded, believe it or not. And so the weavers, what I really wanted to show was like the weaving of life. We all have bits and pieces of us, and so how does that weave into our life? And so as the healer, how would that weave into like for this collector, it was made for a specific person. So how would those weavings, translate into her life?
Mhm.
So once I know like the healer and it's for this person, and I gather a little bit of information from her on what she wants to heal, then it's like then I scribble down the thing, and it really is just a scribble.
Mhm.
Uh, and then I just get started on it. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Like it's just so
Yeah,
fascinating.
well, thank you for, I tell some people this and they're going, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, that blank stare, and I'm like, oh man, I can't even go there because, you
Yeah.
know, just,
Yeah.
but I feel so fortunate that like you and I and others that we actually get to do this. Like that this can be our voice.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
that's really wonderful.
Yeah. I kind of find like for me, like whether I'm doing something just for myself or whether I'm doing it for a doll that I've, created for somebody, which has usually been like a needle felted doll or that kind of thing. That like the happy accidents, are the thing that is usually like so interesting. It's usually something that somebody will be like, why, like there's a little bit of an edge sometimes there, for people. And then I'll be like, well, this is what it feels like to me, and this is the message I was getting as kind of I looked at that, and it really kind of ties to your life, like, isn't that funny how that happened? And so, do you find that in your work when you've kind of got it, sort of sorted out, from the get-go? Um, what do those happy accidents look like for you?
Oh, yeah, there synchronicity. So I love, that the connection of life. And I went through a period of my life where it was very difficult, and so I created a series of moths. And they had to be moths because they had to be dusty, because that's how I was feeling. I was feeling very dusty. And I use a lot of Japanese kimono fabric in my work. And so that was the backside of the wing. So the front vision was of the doll, and I used like a cheesecloth type of silk that was just looked like a cocoon. So it was very brown and dusty looking. And so then I thought, I love symbolism so much, and I feel like everything, like, everything's tied, like the red string, everything's tied. And so I went to look up the moths, and the moths basically they always have faith that they will be led towards the light.
Mm.
And so then I looked up each one that I did because I did three different ones. And each one was talking about healing and about like having faith, like keep going. You've got this, and all will be provided for. And so sometimes I look up things before I'm making them, but like these pieces had to be made. I just knew they had to be made. So I looked up the symbolism afterwards, but it's still tied in. And so that's, yeah, That's a cool thing.
Yeah. But do you ever find like, something that you're making where you thought it was going to be like this and it was just like, oop, I don't know what happened. Like the head just got too big over here and you kept it or like any of that kind of stuff? Or do you
Um,
sort of like come back to technique at that point and just,
yeah, I am in the process of creating a new workshop right now, and I because I've been doing this long enough, I can usually sit down and draft out a pattern and just go with it. I
Mhm.
have made this head 5 times, and th this has not happened to me in a very, very long, long, long. I can't remember when this last happened to me. And I made it the second to last head I made, and I went, it's really lovely, but it's not this piece. It's just not this piece. So those two, they're two dolls together. So I put those two heads aside and I redrafted it, and now it's like exactly where I want it to be.
Mhm.
But it took me 5 times to do it, and um, so yeah, so I'm going to keep those other two pieces.
Yeah.
Um, I have an idea of where I want them to be. Um, but I don't know. I don't know,
Yeah.
it's well, okay. And I'm going to back up just so I can, happy accident. There's a piece that I did called The Cicada, and it's about emergence.
Mm.
And I created the doll body. So it was in a Japanese Chiraman silk, white, cream colored. And I'm like, I want to dye the body, but I want to use alcohol inks. And if you've ever worked with alcohol inks, there is no rhyme or reason. You
Control. Yeah.
cannot control them. They are what they are. But I'm dyeing the entire body that I've like sculpted the head, overlaid the head. I'm using this expensive fabric, and I'm like, I am just going for it. I'm just going to do it.
Mhm.
And it to me, it turned out beautifully, and the colors went together. And I mean, from head to toe, and I loved it. And so I just went with it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of going back to the moths is just having faith in yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I find too, there's often, we can create meaning, and so my whole approach, is more of just like this is a process and let's see what the story, kind of comes out as we're making. And whenever I've made things and it's just sort of been like, this is really weird looking. It's like, but I just feel like it's still right. And I feel like there's always a message like that comes through and like, something that looks like scary or sort of I made this one thing where it was just like this purple face and she had hair that was just like wire going everywhere and she looked like a little intense and a little scary and for other people that's what it would be but like for me there was like a really clear message coming through and I did not intend that to start out looking like that it just kind of happened and I'm like well I'm just going to keep it I'm going to go for it there's something that's coming out of me I'm going to keep it so we can always like find a reason, I guess, for it to be there,
Yeah. And I also think it's like, the connection with the divine is like giving you or guiding, your voice. And
Yeah.
so, you will reach for the purple because that's what it's telling you to do,
Right. Yeah.
and so that's what you do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. And um I love the way you are approaching it because it is really listening to what your soul, your intention is, and
Mhm.
following it.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's creativity at its best.
Yeah. 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 So let me kind of think about it because I asked lots of questions sort of in the beginning when I was like saying, hey, let's chat. But
Yes.
yeah, so when somebody's kind of feeling like they're sort of pulled to make a doll or they're sort of unsure, like in the teaching work that you do, like what do you say to them like particularly if there's kind of like I'm not creative and I don't really know if I can do this because that's another big theme like, especially for women our age I hear this all the time well I'm just not really creative or like I would come to you and be like I cannot sew so what do you say to people sort of in that place who are also just really called to, I need to make this thing?
I think that's so important that they listen to their voice because even if the idea or the feeling or the emotion is coming to you, that's giving you the permission right there. I
Mhm.
mean, you have it all right. And, they say, oh, everybody's creative. Well, it takes time to be creative and it takes confidence to be creative. And so I think the most wonderful thing is if you really want to make something, seek out somebody that can help you, because a lot of times we're trying to do things on our own, especially I think women of our generation. We did things on our own and we were the helpers, but we never got the help and we
Right.
never learned how to ask for help. I am so guilty of that.
Mhm.
Um, but if we can seek out help, and there's so many of us out there to seek, to give help and to give guidance,
Mhm.
um, to do it. And I'm just going to reemphasize that if that idea or that, you know, driven need has come to you, that you're already halfway there, So now you just need to find somebody to help you, especially if you're beginning because you don't know,
Mhm.
So give yourself a little bit of grace.
Yeah. And it comes back to that thing of like, again, let's call it the divine. Let's call it that thing that, sometimes I'll call it like creativity is more than the thing that we just make. It's like this energy that kind of inspires us, right? And often that's what we need to connect with, right? And so the making is really the ability to kind of come into that. And again, like you said, like practice it, sort of build that muscle. But to know, like, if you have that impulse, to me, it's
Yeah,
like that's creativity in whatever form, sort of knocking on the door, going,
right.
this is waiting for you. Like, are you going to be the one to just sort of say yes and see what comes out,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to listen to that voice or listen to that knock and
Hmm.
go over and open the door.
Yeah.
Um, and through doing that, once you open the door, you step into such a world of incredible wonder,
Mhm.
and curiosity. And all you need to do is just go, okay, I'm going to do it. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so true. Like, because, I would imagine that you've had even though you were worked in dentistry. I could
Yeah.
just see from behind you, and for the past 35 years, you've been in a very creative space.
Yes.
And so a lot of people may be sort of looking at you going, wow, well, you're just creative and you kind of think creatively and you knew what you wanted to do from the very beginning kind of thing. But it's that, that pull that we often feel like at this stage, or where we've just been, life has sort of beaten us down a little bit and we've lost that creativity. And that it is just being like, just say yes, just do it, and just like
Mhm.
kind of see what happens and sort of open that door. Let it be a process. And it doesn't have to be a big, huge thing. Like you could start with something small.
Right. And I think the thing is too is um when you see somebody like, I'm just gonna say on my side of it, who's been doing it for 35 years,
Mhm.
full time and devoted on it, Um, I had to also start somewhere, and I started with little wool rag dolls, like button eyes, little bracelet, vintage bead bracelet, and little dresses or little pants kind of thing for them. And they were very simple, and it was a McCall's pattern, that I used because that's what I knew to do. And um, so everybody has to start somewhere. And so I think in today's world there's so much information about all of us out there that it's hard for somebody that is a beginner to go, oh man, I could never do that stuff,
Mhm.
and but but the big thing is, and I want to stress it, it's important that they do it. It's so important that they do it
Yeah.
because that it's somebody, something, some entity,
Yeah.
telling you that you've got this in you, and so you can do it. That's why I'm
Mhm.
giving you the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't ever remember where I saw this or like where it came from, but it was that like if you, it's basically the idea, like if you have the thought, then you have the ability to do it,
Right,
idea.
right,
Right? Yeah.
right,
And
right. And I truly believe that.
yeah,
Yeah,
me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It may
definitely.
not come out the way you think it's supposed to be, but then you've got to sort of let it go and just allow
Right.
the process.
Right. And it kind of leads back to, the five heads that I've just been doing. And I
Mhm.
mean, I've been doing this for a long time and I do know how to draft patterns like very quickly.
Mhm.
And it still took me five times to get this one right,
Yeah.
And so you can't get mad at yourself or down on yourself. You just go, okay, this isn't right.
Keep
And
doing
so
it. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
make a new one or you really look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love it too because it's that idea too of that there's something that you were given to do in a sense, or something that you were just had this impulse to create. But there's this story that you're listening to, this story that you're kind of following. And your dolls do have a real story, that you kind of come into you it sounds like anyway that you start a bit with the story and you kind of keep following it. And for me, I start and I find the story, as I'm making, but there's always something there, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right. And I think that this is what I when I do critiques for people and that type of thing, um, I always like, what is your message? What do you want your message to be?
Mhm.
What do you want this piece to say without words?
Yeah.
To another. And my hope is that when you look at some of my pieces, especially my collector pieces, that you can see it or somewhat understand the story. I mean, my stories are very detailed, but that you can at least get a sense of the story without words.
Yeah. Yeah. And that kind of brings me back to the beginning here, like of the blank stare when we say like we're doll makers, and especially for you, because there really is this whole world of art dolls, like what you create and this story and this beautiful like piece of art, that people are getting. Yeah. And it's something that, is more than just a doll. Like as we're
Right,
talking about this, there's so many layers, it sounds like, to your work. I mean, it is a piece of fine art, and it is also just technically, just beautiful, that there's this like spiritual element to it, and this symbolism and the story that is really particular to the person that you're creating for,
mhm,
or to create that then becomes the right story for the person who is going to
right,
get it.
right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say most of my pieces are spirit story driven.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Even my workshop pieces have that in
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
And that's my voice. And
Hmm.
everybody can have their own creative. I think that's the beautiful thing about creativity and about art is there is no wrong voice.
Hmm.
Everybody's voice is their voice, and that's what's so special.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna let us wrap this up here so that people can then just go and see your work.
Yeah.
So again, I'm gonna post links to ways that you can connect with Leslie's blog and her Instagram, or like all the different places maybe that you've got
Right,
you can check
right.
it out, and to her website for sure, where you can see, some of her classes and things like that.
Yeah.
I highly, highly recommend that you go and kind of check out what she's up to, because it
Thank,
really is just gorgeous. Your work is
thank you.
gorgeous.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love just that anytime that I can have that conversation about sort of the message and the spiritual and the sort of the mystical idea, about doll making, and kind of no matter how you begin, it's there. That
Right.
I love
Right.
I love being able to let people know that that's kind of what's going on when we make dolls.
Yes. Absolutely.
Even though the way that we approach it is really different and the outcome is really different, there's that
Right.
special zhuzhy thing that's
Yes.
going on that's
Yeah.
really important. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like both of us have the same intent,
Yeah.
and we're just coming from it from a different pathway. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But thanks for
Thank
chatting with
you.
me, and definitely everybody go check out Leslie, what she's up
Yes.
to. All right. So, all
Thank
right.
you.
Take care.
Thank you. All right.